Talktainment Radio Worldwide Sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. You can join us live every week at the same time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on TalkTainmentRadio.com for exclusive coverage of The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, how are you?
I'm still learning.
Mr. Fuller, we are joined in the studio with Denise Montgomery. Denise, of course, had a show, has a show, still plays. It's called the DM Global Report, and of course, she is a person who's traveled all over the world and had a chance to look firsthand at a lot of the social and racial issues. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning, Kahari. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
All right, Mr. Fuller, let's talk about how we can get the definitive work, your definitive 2 books. Let's say the name of them. Tell people how they can order them, and then we proceed from there. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
You can get them by going to producejustice.com, and that will be the textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of white supremacy. That's a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of white supremacy. And it's addressed to those people who are classified as non-white individually. It's addressed to individual people and their individual problems that they may perceive that they have with the system of white supremacy, which I have assessed, following the logic, is the most potent, the most powerful system of government on the planet. There is no system of government, political system, or religious system more powerful, in my opinion, than the system of white supremacy, and that you can't really solve any other major problem on the planet until you solve that problem. If you try to edge around it, there's no way to do it.
Okay.
There's absolutely no way.
All right. Mr. Fuller, something came out. There was a shooting this past weekend, I believe, in California, where 7 people were killed or something. I forgot the actual total. But it was the aftermath that has caused a lot of controversy. Film director Judd Apatow and actor Seth Rogen both blasted Washington Post film critic Ann Horaday's op-ed in which he suggests that Elliot Rodgers' mass killing in California is tied to white men in Hollywood promoting escapist fantasies that revolve around vigilantism and sexual wish fulfillment. I don't know if you're familiar. I'm sure you've heard about this. Have you not, Mr. Fuller?
I've heard a portion of it, yes.
Yeah, they're saying they're blaming the mass shooting on white male Hollywood culture. And I don't know what all those words mean, but I want you to chime in and let me get your thoughts on it, because you've talked about the movies a lot. You've talked about how images are portrayed. You talked about a host of things related to that. But what would be, in your opinion, a white male Hollywood culture? Let's see if we can kind of get to that. Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Well, I do know that there's a culture that glorifies violence. Now, who's best at it? I couldn't say, but my suspicion is that the people who believe in white supremacy definitely believe in violence, because you cannot have a system of white supremacy, which means mistreating people based on color. You can't dominate and mistreat people based on color without the threat of violence. If you're just going to point out a person and say, for some reason you were born the wrong color, and for that reason I have come to the conclusion as a white person and as a white supremacist that you are eligible to be mistreated because you have color in your skin. And for some reason, that tells me that I can dominate and mistreat you, and that no one can do anything about it, and no one should try to do anything about it, because this is the way it ought to be. If you have color in your skin, for whatever reason, for whatever created you, and put that color in your skin, therefore, if I am a person classified as white, I not only have the privilege of dominating and mistreating you, I have a duty of dominating and mistreating you. Find every way I can to dominate and mistreat you. Why? So that I can feel good about myself, so that I can glorify being violent against you and anything that looks like you, and make an entire culture and an entire dominant government system, political system, and religious system that will be the most powerful in carrying out that mission. And that I really don't have any other mission. I have no other agenda on the planet. All of my science, all of my technology is to glorify and have fun. And last but not least, get material benefits from mistreating people who have color, and this is the criteria, color in the skin. You have color in your skin, black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige. You have color in your skin. Therefore, the reason that I exist is to just hound you, find you wherever you are on some Pacific island or wherever, just chase you down, run you through the forest, and throw a net over your head and drag you somewhere where I want you to be. And then just beat you and tell you that you are the worst thing that ever appeared on the planet, and just drum that into your mind and get you to mistreat people that look like yourself, get you to mistreat people in your own family, and that's my duty. And I don't know who thought it up, but it was passed down, and I latched on to it, and I'm glad of it. And this is what evolved into what I call the system of white supremacy. And I wasn't the first one to call it that, because they called it that, the system of white supremacy, which means what? Anybody who is white, anybody who is classified as white, and they do the classifying, can point out anyone who is classified as non-white for the purpose of dominating and mistreating, those two factors. Mm-hmm. And you have to have violence to do that.
Mr. Fuller,
I myself came up reading what I call mystery novels. Mm-hmm. In fact, even before I started reading mystery novels, I was reading stories that teachers' assignments in grade school. Edgar Allan Poe, mm-hmm. The Raven, all about death. And the major thing that stands out with me with Shakespeare's works, Macbeth. Mm-hmm. The only thing I really remember from Shakespeare right this minute is Macbeth, beware Macduff. And that's one thing that I remember. And then another is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Now, why is it that I'm a little colored boy sitting in the segregated South in a classroom, and I'm being taught this, systematically taught this?
Well,
the dagger,
we were taught it
the
in the
handle
North,
pointed toward my hand. And then fast forward until what we're talking about right now, mm-hmm. someone stabbing 3 people to death, stabbing them, Macbeth, grand old Shakespeare, all about killing. Let's glorify killing. Let's get some killing on the road.
So, Mr. Fuller,
hey,
what you're
what about
saying?
John Dillinger?
So, what you're saying is that violence is core to the system of white supremacy.
Appears that way.
It's the means to perpetuate and carry it out. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Say that again.
It's the means to perpetuate and carry it forward.
Oh, sure, sure. And then you put that on a color basis, and it spreads all over the world like a brush fire.
Right.
Which is what the system of racism has been. So you have, I always say, you have deceit and violence. And deception, when you're trying to deceive someone to their detriment, that's a form of violence. So you put those two together, and you got an entire culture that we call white supremacy.
Okay,
now,
Denise, you had a question.
I had another question, Mr. Fuller. When Kahari had actually brought it up earlier in regarding to the shootings that happened in Santa Monica, California, and how someone has now tied the shootings to the white male Hollywood culture. Now, you know, I look at one of the major, I would say, cornerstones of white supremacy that was set out in the United States was the book that was written by Willie Lynch. We know about that book that was To Control Your Slaves. Now, how do you relate that to do you see that the Hollywood culture is, again, another tool being used to perpetuate it, but just by imagery, and that's it, by imagery?
Mr. Fuller?
Sure. I mean, every statue in public squares, for the most part, has, you know, we have a lot of statues in different cities and whatnot of generals that are taken up. You know, you have to drive around a circle or something to get around them. I mean, it impedes traffic, really. And a lot of people don't really pay any attention to it because they're trying to pay attention to traffic just to get around some general on a horseback with a sword in his hand pointed toward the sky, I mean, charging or something like that, and it'll be General so-and-so, a General so-and-so, a General so-and-so. And so
all the white generals throughout American history, the black generals, the generals that I knew of growing up, Benjamin Davis and Chappie James. Are there any statues of those men? I don't know if statues of those two specific. Those are just two that came off the top of my head. I don't know if those even exist. There are a lot of 4-star, 5-star African American generals, but are there any statues erected to them? I don't know of any.
No, I don't either, right offhand, but I do believe that.
Yeah, and you live in Washington, D.C., right?
Yes. Plenty of statues.
Yes, and I would think that if there was
them, I don't think most people do. I don't think most people actually read the writing on the base of the statue to see who it is who's taking up all this space. But I do believe that it's not a correct idea to glorify anyone who's in the business of death making. Now that's just unilateral across the business, right?
That's heavy.
No! I mean, you don't build monuments. I mean, you lament this. This is something that even a soldier, him or herself, should say. That I'm in a business of making death, but I'm not glorifying it. I don't think there's anything funny about it.
Right.
I don't think there's anything great about it. It's a tragic necessity. This is how I label things like that in my book.
It is, yes.
In the writing. These are tragic necessities sometimes. And then most of the time, they are not necessities at all.
Right.
You can, and I just recently heard about the death of Maya Angelou.
Yeah, I just heard that also. Yeah.
Yes, and a lady like that has talked about peace and whatnot.
Right.
Now, this is what should be perpetuated. These are the kind of thoughts, the kind of things that she talked about during her extended time here on the planet.
Exactly, right.
Or some would say even a short time on the planet, for her input and her writing of the poems and her essays and her novels and etc. and her travels all over the world. And this is the type of thing that she was talking about. not how to come up with a better sword or a better gun, I mean, to kill somebody. I mean, but this is what is glorified in most of the folklore in the system of white supremacy. And they are the usual suspects because they are the ones who, I know John Wayne actually said in a Playboy magazine article, if I remember correctly, and I think I remember correctly, that he believed in white supremacy.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Now,
I remember the article.
Mm-hmm.
Actor John Wayne is considered an icon.
Oh, yes.
And every time you see a picture of him, for the most part, he's got that Winchester in his hand, or he's got a 6-shooter on his hip, and his brow is furrowed, one of his top characteristics as an actor. All right?
Right.
Yes, I mean, he's looking like he's angry about something or that he's mad at somebody. I mean, and he's going and get him, and he's going to shoot him, evidently, when he does get him within range of him. I mean, fill your hand, USOB, true grit. And so this type of thing being perpetuated. And then you have Godfather 1 and 2 and whatnot. I mean, make them an offer they can't refuse. And
if they refuse, they're going to find a horse in their bed.
And on and on. Violence. And then you look up and see some incident of a school shooting or something like that.
Right.
And you say, that's amazing.
No, it's not.
I mean, I wonder how that happened.
Right. No, it's not.
I wonder what was in a person's mind that would get them that kind of idea. I mean, I wonder why, a person would go and get a gun and want to kill someone.
Right.
When
we live in a violent society.
By a bookstore window, almost everything in that bookstore window, the average bookstore, that is, well-stocked bookstore.
Right.
You got a dagger on the cover. You got a gun on the cover.
Right.
You got titles like The Headless Corpse.
Right.
You got titles like The Body in the Basement, The Body in the Attic,
right.
The Body on the Side of the Road, Murder in the Rue Morgue, Murder in the Church, Murder.
Right, murder.
You walk in and you say, I'm looking for a book on how to grow tomatoes. We have a few back there in the back, I think. Go back there and look on that back shelf and whatnot.
Right.
But we have some books right up here called Murder Mysteries. I mean, we got about 15 racks of those.
Oh, I know. Barnes and Nobles. I mean, all the time I get their emails. Here's some murder mystery thrillers. I'm thinking, really?
Thrillers too.
Yeah, they're thrillers.
And not only are you killing somebody,
they're thrilling.
It is thrilling.
It's thrilling. Yes.
Right.
It's thrilling.
It's amazing how we have been programmed. Let me go to a caller who's been waiting patiently. Caller, thank you. You're on the air with Mr. Neely Fuller. I'm Brother Kahari and Denise Montgomery sitting in. You're on the air. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, sir. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
All right, thank you. The sister, she brought up a great point about the violence and also the Willie Lynch letter, in which I have that book, in which I bought at Barnes & Nobles about a year ago. And I think it's a very important book that all non-white people should be well-versed in.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why is Willie Lynch an important book, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it's just like when you lose your keys or you lose a sock. And right now, you get full of anxiety and befuddled, and you don't know what to do, and you just start going to a bunch of different areas. But if you calm down and if you start working backwards from where you're at, you might can find yourself. And I know I've been kind of going through that experience, and trying to find myself and recorrect the mental side that we have been put through RWS.
Here, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead,
I just
Denise.
read an article yesterday, and they were talking about when you go to get something that you forgot. It's the walking through a doorway, a portal, that is like a shutting off zone. It shuts off your mind, and it's a walking through a doorway, a portal, and that is where the disconnect is made. And you trying to remember what you forgot and where you placed it.
So what's happening is that he's walking. So what you're saying, Carl, is you're walking back through all of the disinformation, misinformation, and trying to get your mind corrected so you can move forward. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, sir. And then also learning what brought about the menticide, like Dr. Bobby Wright. He did the lecture on menticide.
Out of Chicago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a young brother myself, and so I'm going back on YouTube and finding out about these brothers I ain't never heard of and whatnot. So I mean, that's a whole nother process in itself. But it's the trauma that they put our minds through that made it to reverse the nature of our minds. Absolutely. And that's what we're pretty much to me sums it all up, that we're dealing with non-white people of a mind reversal. Not that we was born like that or created like that, but it was something done to us.
Exactly.
You know, and like the violence that she brought up. It's this one psychologist, B.F. Skinner, and he's very much so touted amongst the
behavior modification. You're talking about behavior modification, B.F. Skinner.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
And if I could just read real quick about the violence and being under a system of racism, white supremacy to keep people in line, it said that Skinner invented the operant conditioning chamber, also known as the Skinner box. He was a firm believer of the idea that human free will was actually an illusion, and any human action was the result of the consequences of the same action. If the consequences were bad, there was a high chance that the action would not be repeated. However, if the consequences were good, the actions that led to it being reinforced. Excuse me.
Being reinforced.
Yes, which would be reinforced. He called this the principle of reinforcement.
Mr. Fuller,
and to me that kind of sums up the whole violence initiative. And then also, I know Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it, and I'm going to echo it, as far as I believe white supremacists to be wickedly wise and supremely evil. And every day, they're committing warfare against us. But as Brother Phil Valentine said, I believe it's a hyper-psychological and spiritual warfare.
Let me say this.
Going back to...
Right. Let me say this. Let me say this. I think many people have looked at this and examined it, but for me, the one who I think put it right where it is more than anyone is the gentleman that we talk to every week. I first met Mr. Fuller in 1975, and I love all of the people that you're talking about. I mean, I'm dead with it. I'm right there with it. But I think Mr. Fuller, probably more than anyone, or is equal as anyone, has really defined and captured at least the fundamental ground basis for how we should view the whole thing. Just for example, I just discovered in a research out of Switzerland, where they revealed that 147 companies run everything in the world. And all of these companies are white-dominated and white-controlled. I mean, if you just needed ground-level evidence of the existence of what Mr. Fuller says, that alone, you have to do nothing else. Just that alone documents exactly what Mr. Fuller said. Mr. Fuller, let me get in and give you a chance to have some comments on what you've heard.
Well, I've always said that don't believe anything that Neely Fuller says about race or racism or counter-racism. I mean, just listen to everything that everybody says, including all of the writers, both white and non-white, all of the white people who say, Ku Klux Klan members and Nazi Party members. Listen to what they have to say. Don't turn off the radio when they are speaking and all like that.
Oh, not at all.
Or when they are writing. I mean, see what they have to say.
That's right.
And then always look for one basic thing for the first to start off with, and that is the truth.
The truth.
Well,
always
Mr. Fuller,
don't run from the truth. I don't care who's coming up with it.
Right, and that's why we had talked about people's reaction to Donald Sterling's statements and other Cliven Bundy. Our whole position here, Mr. Fuller, was let them talk. I mean, we want to know what's being said. Am I correct, Mr. Fuller?
Not only what's being said, what people are actually thinking, because everything is thought, speech, then action. And whatever people are thinking about, they are going to speak about or maybe not speak about. They'll make a point of not speaking about what they're thinking about, and then they'll go to that third entity, and that's the action part.
The action step.
Because at the end of the day, you really want to know what a person is going to do,
right.
Not so much what they're thinking. That's important. That's where it all starts, because whatever's in your mind, you're going in that direction. You keep thinking about something, you're going to start talking about it, or maybe you might decide that maybe what you're thinking about is a little too volatile, or it may not work out the way that you want it to work out, so you will just go from thought to action. You won't even say anything about it, but you will try to act on what you're thinking about. That's just the nature of people, period. That's the nature of all organisms. That's the nature of a cat.
Right.
I mean, whatever that cat is thinking about, that cat keeps looking at that tree and keeps looking at that tree and sees a bird nest up there or something like that, and the cat is thinking. Now, the cat is not making any sound. It's not going around advertising or carrying a sign saying, I'm looking at that bird nest, but that's what the cat is thinking. Next thing you know, that cat is trying to find a way to get up on a rooftop and get on a limb and go out to that bird's nest, because that's how the cat is thinking. Now, it's the same way with a white person that believes in racism. But they'll say, oh, I can't express what I'm really thinking about in this office. I really can't stand these black people. I mean, they come around, doing this and doing that. I don't even like the way that they look or the way they talk or the things that they say to me. I'll be polite to them and all like that. But I cannot stand to be around these people one more day. See, now, this person is thinking that, okay? Now, the question is raised. Should the person say that? I'm saying yes, if it's going to make a problem, if it's going to result in that problem of people taking action. Many black people walking around on eggshells every day on job situations, afraid that some white person is going to say something to them to hurt their feelings. That should not be at all in 2014. Go ahead and hurt my feelings, because whatever you're thinking, that's what you're going to do, and I'm going to fool around and lose my job behind what you're thinking. So you let me know what your beef is right now. I mean, pour it all out.
Oh, yeah, I'd rather know. I'd rather know. Let me know, right. I agree with you. Mr. Fuller, I wanted to ask you, the caller that called in, and he named several books, but I was trying to get the exact title of your book. You said if you go to producejustice.com, you said there are two books. There's a textbook and a workbook.
And a word guide.
Well, both of them are textbook workbooks, but one is a basic book. It has a computer design on it. Now, that's the basic book. That's information about what I think white supremacy is all about, plus what the individual person can do about it.
And the actual title is?
The second book, ma'am?
What the actual title is?
The actual title is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. But also there's a subtitle that's more explicit. In other words, it explains what all those other words really are about. And that is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism. Racism being white supremacy. Mm-hmm. There's no other form of racism other than white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And that's the assumption. But the basic title is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And what that means,
code system concept.
Basically that means it's addressed to individuals. You're united and you're independent in how you think, speak, and act.
Right.
That's what it points to. You are about trying to compensate for something that's been around too long. That's a system of government called white supremacy that needs to be replaced with a better government, and presumably that better government would be a government of justice. Replace white supremacy with justice, and that would be a compensatory act. Just like unemployment compensation, you're making up for what's missing.
Right.
What is missing? What is missing is justice. So that's what that compensatory means in the title. And then you have code system concept, 3 words, the last 3 words in the basic title. Now, what that means is you will use an individual code, which is what I try to outline in the book. You address a code to individuals. It's not a secret code. It's just a way to get things done, like an electrical code, like a plumbing code, like a fire code in an apartment building. You have to have a fire code. I mean, fire inspectors will come around and they'll look around and say, you don't have enough fire extinguishers.
You're in violation of the code, right?
Yeah, right. You're in violation of the code because you don't have enough fire extinguishers and you don't have any fire exits. Mm-hmm. This place is made out of wood, and you have a lot of people working in here, mm-hmm. and you don't have a fire exit. You just have one way out, and in the back door down on the first floor, and you have no fire escapes or anything like that. You don't have any ledges for people to stand on in case they're trying to get away. And so this place has to be brought up to code. I mean, it's not secret. I mean, it's just a way of getting things done in the most efficient manner.
So your book is a code to break that cycle of racism. Is that it? I'm just trying to sum it up real quick.
I tell you what, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, Mr. Fuller.
All right.
Everyone, stay right there. Denise, all callers, and everyone else. This is the compensatory concept heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Have you ever wished you could spend more time with your kids, or maybe quality time with your spouse, when you can actually have an uninterrupted conversation? Do you owe your dad a little catch-up time? Well, it's time to reconnect, and no activity can bond a family together quite like boating and fishing. I mean, think of all the great experiences you had as a kid when you went boating or fishing. Well, guess what? It's still great. Boating and fishing are the perfect opportunities for your family to get away, to talk, to laugh, to create new memories. So take someone you love out on the water and see where the water takes you. If you haven't been on the water in a while and you're not sure where to start, or if you just like to have some helpful tips for your next trip, please visit TakeMeFishing.org. This has been a public service of TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
For information on everything from passports to driver's licenses to local weather, go to firstgov.gov. Firstgov.gov, the official source for federal, state, and local government information.
Years ago, identical twins were separated at birth. Chris Paul was destined for life with basketball. Cliff Paul was destined to become a State Farm agent. They shared one invaluable trait. They were both born to assist. Find an agent born to get you to a better state.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
You got the power.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with Mr. Neely Fuller. You can also catch us this afternoon at 3 p.m. on Talktainment Radio Eastern Standard Time, and the replay is at 10 p.m. tonight. Plus, you can hear Mr. Fuller 24 hours a day, 7 days a week All you have to do is go to talktainmentradio.com, hit programs, and then pull up the podcast. Podcasts are really a fancy name for rebroadcast of shows that we've done before. Just wanted to confirm what Mr. Fuller had mentioned. According to the New York Times, the report that I'm reading, Maya Angelou, lyrical witness of the Jim Crow South, died today at 86. Of course, her famous book was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and she did just so many things, from movies to poet laureate to just about everything you could think of, and she was at the swearing in of Bill Clinton, the nation's 42nd president. So our condolences go out to the family of one simply magnificent great lady, Maya Angelou. Mr. Fuller, we're joined with Denise Montgomery of Talktainment Radio and Talktainment Television. And also we have on the line a caller, and I want to go straight to the caller before we get back in. And Mr. Fuller, could you say for Denise, could you just repeat the names of both of your books and where you can get them? And then, caller, we'll bring you in. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Right. It would just be textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of white supremacy, called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That's the basic title of both books. But the second book is a word guide. It just has words in it that are designed to be used in a counter-racist fashion in working against racism. The kind of words to look for and the questions to ask about. The questions are asked when people use certain words. You ask questions to those people about these certain words. And then when you use words yourself, there are certain words that you simply don't use. And then there are other words that you do use. Mm-hmm. And so that's what that book is about. It's a counter-racist word guide. And you can get both books by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very, very good.
Go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, and I just want to say to Mr. Fuller, thank you so much for your code. Thank you for this compensatory concept. It is sheer genius. And I just want to go ahead and get straight to my question. I live in the Chicagoland area, and in the area where people are classified as, black people, it is extraordinarily violent. The violence is really underestimated, and it's almost, at least around here, is taken as a given. Bloodshed, just the likes of which you would almost think you were in a war zone. Now, against that backdrop, there is also a move by lots of people in the real estate business. I just happen to know a lady who's within Chicago Title, a title company. And she says within the last 3 years, something that she has seen, that she has never really seen since she's worked there, and she worked there for 30 years. And in a lot of the areas where it is, where it's considered black, quote, quote, there has been just an uptick in land exchanges.
Yes.
In other words,
you mean buying property? They're buying up property.
Yes, sir. Just an uptick in land exchanges, in the sense that a lot of properties that probably would have been considered Section 8 properties are now being bought by only a very, perhaps she says a handful of companies, and I mean companies are doing this. Now, given all that, we also know about the immigration reform that's coming down through Congress. And what I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller was, what are your thoughts on how this immigration reform could contribute to the vast displacement of victims of white racism?
Wow, that is heavy.
According to my friend, she says if the amount of land in these areas could absolutely and utterly displace, and this is the number that she gave me, 97%. Wow. 97% of the black people in these areas, and it could happen overnight.
Yes, it's happening. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, we just saw
right
it
here in Columbus.
We saw it right in Detroit, where the governor, Rick Snyder, went on the air and asked the Chinese to come in and buy up all the property, and then they allowed it, of course, to go into bankruptcy. But that is fantastic. The question you have asked, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, that's deep, and I know you've talked about some of that before. Let's get right into it, Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Yes, there are 6 major white supremacist strategies for confusion, in my opinion, and according to logic and observation. One is racial classification confusion, and the second one, in the order that I have them listed, is racial dislocation confusion. And years ago, I was in Columbus, Ohio, and I was at a lady's house where I was invited as a guest, and we were sitting there at her table.
I was there with you.
Yes, sir. I think you might remember it.
Yeah, I remember.
And so she asked, she said, Mr. Fuller, what's your opinion of all this moving around of black people is concerned? Because they're talking about maybe moving into my neighborhood, and I might have to move out of my house. And I like this neighborhood, and it's a nice neighborhood. And I said, yes, it is. It's very nice, and it's a very nice house and a very nice neighborhood. And I said, but I've been wrestling with it in my mind about what you do about racial dislocation, because that's one of the strategies that the white supremacists use. I said, and I haven't come up with an answer for that, or even a suggestion, because I just try to make suggestions in order to compensate for whatever's going on, because, you have to address everything to the individual. And this was an individual lady who was asking me about dislocation. And I said, and the only thing I can tell you, ma'am, at this time is prepare to move, because I can't think of any way to keep them from doing this now, because they insist on doing this all over the world. The minute black people or people of color get situated anywhere, I got a slogan for it. Here they come again.
Here they come again.
Yes, they're coming. They're coming and say, oh, I mean, this is where your tribe is situated. I mean, if it's people who are so-called Indians and whatnot, or Native Americans, they'll say, oh, it looks like you all are getting pretty well set up here. You no longer just have trailers and whatnot, and people sitting up getting drunk all day. It looks like you're beginning to build schools. You're beginning to come up with little cottage industries and whatnot here on your reservation. Oh, well, now, we can't have this. It looks like you're going to make progress rather than just lay around getting drunk all day. So I'm going to figure out a way to move you out of here.
Right.
I mean, so that because they have found out.
Well established, right?
Yes, that they have found out that whenever you keep people on the move, those people are in disarray. They are confused. They have to start all over again. And this is what they do. Wherever the black people are, you start getting that second-generation house, which they discovered that in the Northwestern Hemisphere after World War II. Some black people start getting a second-generation house, and starting on the third generation. And they start noticing whole neighborhoods of that, particularly in the Middle West and some places in the South. And they said, oh, we're not going to have this, because once people get that second-generation house, it means they have members of the family who can stay there when they're unemployed and all like that, and they can get on their feet
because the
when
house
they
is
leave.
Already paid for, right?
Yes, because the house is already paid for. We can't have houses already paid for by these black people.
So
that ain't going to happen no more.
Shake them up and move them again. Right?
Yes, right. Just about time they get just about halfway established and think that they're now getting a little breathing space, have them move again. Eminent domain. Build a shopping center where they are, or a highway, or run a railroad through it, or whatever. But get them out of there. Scatter them all over the place. A family of 10 people that looked like they were getting on their feet. Now they got to move to 15 different states.
I've seen it time and time again in Columbus, Ohio.
And they will continue to do this because they have to. So right now, the only thing that we can do to compensate for that is that don't accumulate too much stuff. That's all I can say right now.
So we should hold ourselves back from succeeding?
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying until we figure out how to confront this, because I don't know what to do about it, because they're doing it all over the world. That's why you have whole tribes. I mean, in what we call the Congo,
right,
and Central Africa,
being moved and
displaced. I mean, they usually disrupt everything there by having people come through there shooting machine guns in the middle of the night. So now you got to move again.
Right.
Why? Because they got some oil up under the ground. That's what it's really all about.
Right.
But they'll say that we are looking for some terrorists. We heard somebody firing some shots over here. So we're sending in our well-paid army of the other tribe that we armed last week, and we are having them come through here and find out what the problem is.
Mr. Fuller, you know, the whole kidnapping thing in Nigeria of the 300 girls, there were 59 boys that were killed 3 weeks ago from ages 9 to 11. Nobody said a word. So many people believe just what you're saying, that Nigeria is sitting on top of all this oil. Looks like they might be getting powerful. Now all of a sudden, here come the drones, here come the military, here comes civil war possibly, these created Boko Haram group. Nobody knows who's really financing them.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, look like a character from Central Hollywood or somewhere. And then all of a sudden, here comes the civil war, destabilizes the country. Is that what you're talking about, that kind of strategy?
The way I put it in a codified fashion, you always, when you see things like this happen, say, I have reason to believe it's the usual suspects. Mm-hmm. That's the white supremacists collectively worldwide, because they're the greatest network in the world, and they don't miss a chance, and they don't to spot something where it might be troublesome for their criminal enterprises, which the entire system of racism is a criminal enterprise. It works on the same basis as the Corleones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anytime they see a disruption in their operation or a potential disruption, then they, with their deceptive ways, will say, oh, we got some people we got to rescue. I mean, all of a sudden, out of the millions of black females who are being mistreated on a huge scale every day,
absolutely,
millions and millions and millions and millions, all of a sudden, we're concerned about 300 to 500 that, we just discovered black females are being mistreated on the planet. So, we white supremacists, we are real concerned about black vaginas and black feminization and whatnot. We're real concerned about black women. Well, I mean, we have always been concerned about the welfare of black women. That's what the white supremacists will say, like they have been concerned ever about the welfare of black women.
So that
but all of a sudden, out of all of the billions on the planet who are suffering, being stoned to death and all like that, all of a sudden the white supremacists say, Eureka, I heard that there are some black women who have disappeared somewhere.
Right.
So let's marshal all of our world forces and go and find out where this boogeyman is, all of these strange people with these rifles and armored trucks who have suddenly appeared from another planet.
Out of nowhere.
Yes, and we got to go get them.
So you see that as a ploy. It's just a ploy to throw off what the
Sure, it's a ploy to throw it off. I mean, you've got to suspect that because that's their usual pattern.
The usual, the actual, there's something very valuable that they're sitting on, and
oil.
They have to shift that group of people, right?
Mr. Fuller, go ahead. What were you saying?
Yes, I mean, you have to suspect that. Now, it may not be true.
It may not be true.
See, what I'm saying may not be true, but I'm saying this is the premise that you should always start with. I mean, every person who is capable of thinking anything should immediately say, here they come again. There they go again. same old stuff. The minute it appears in the newspapers, that's where your mind should go. That it's the white supremacists again. Why? What's the indication? Because non-white people are suffering. And why do you make the white supremacists the usual suspects? Is because they're in charge of everything. There's nothing in any of the areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. There's nothing that black people, the non-white people of this planet, are doing at any given moment in any of these areas of activity that the white supremacists do not dominate. So if there are black people who are suffering in some village somewhere, on some island, it's the white supremacists' fault. Why? Because they have taken everything from everybody who is non-white.
Mr.
Everything. They left nothing.
Right. Mr. Fuller, let's look at Chicago. The question that was asked, what question should non-white people who are dealing with this, who may not even know it but are getting a clue about it, what questions should they be asking in Chicago right now?
Oh, they should be asking the question, why is it happening? And the answer should jump right out at us. I mean, because we simply say it's the usual suspects. The white supremacists want it to happen. It would not be happening for 5 minutes if the white supremacists didn't want it to happen. Well, that's the answer. That's the way you always look at everything. It's always them. It's always them. It's always them. It's never anybody else, ever.
So don't
you... This is the premise that has to be cemented in everybody's mind. You don't deviate from that under any circumstance.
But can't we?
I mean, it shouldn't be a head-scratching situation in none of these situations. If you go anywhere on the planet and you see non-white people at each other's throats, or if they are just dying of malaria or dying of anything, Ebola or whatever, or that the river's polluted with something or another, or some strange type of fish is eating up the other fish, and so all of the fish are disappearing from this particular water where people for thousands of years have gone to do their fishing, it's always the white supremacists. They are the usual suspects in every case without exception. This is the way you have to look at it. If you look at it in any other way, you're wandering off into their deception.
Mr. Fuller, can I ask you a question? On this gentrification of America that's happening in every major city, it's happening right here in Columbus, Ohio. You see it. Eastgate, Old Town East, around Franklin Park. These homes have been an African-American family, some of them for 2-3 generations. Now they're being taken over by young white couples with, you see, the baby carriages and the strollers. So don't you think the position would be to stay and hold? Don't sell, because what? They're going to move you out to the suburb. You're going to have to pay $7 in gas to drive to work. They can walk right out to Broad Street and get on a bus, and they can be there on a bus pass for $20, $28, or $30 a month. And you're going to be paying $7 in gas. They're going to make you broke just on gasoline. How about that?
The answer is you stay as best you can.
Right.
Yes, you can. You hold on.
Right.
You hold on as best you can.
Right.
But I have experienced that type of thing myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have had to move.
Well,
okay,
like you said, eminent
in my
domain.
own existence, going way back to the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time I heard the term eminent domain.
Right. Right.
See what I mean?
They'll come in and they'll say, "Well, we're going to put a freeway through here. So now all you people will have to you can move out there and buy those new modern houses out in the
scatter
suburbs.
them like chickens.
Scatter them
and have them start all over again. I mean, as individuals scattered all over the place,
and
so that they can't even pool their resources,
and they cannot pool their thoughts either.
Absolutely,
they can't pool their thoughts, their resources. They cannot. The community, the black community, is scattered.
Is that what you mean, Mr. Fuller, by this word destabilization?
Yes, a dislocation, racial dislocation, confusion. That's the label I put on it.
That was your
That's one of the 6 strategies.
Right. Give me a definition of what that term means, racial dislocation, confusion. What do you mean?
In other words, on a color basis, you dislocate people. You're not relocating them. See, when you relocate people, you give them back what you're taking. You give them the equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
See, See, that's the compensatory fashion.
That would be
in other words, the way that's supposed to work, if they're going to force you to move, they don't give you money or something like that and then tell you to find a place, because that's rigged. Right. See, because you can't find a place for the money that they're going to give you.
Right.
What they should do, and this is the way you approach it in a compensatory fashion, you say, okay, you're taking a 4-bedroom house away from me. Now, I got to have a 4-bedroom, 4 to 6 bedrooms, because you're dislocating me, first of all, from a place where I'm satisfied in being to a place that I don't want to go. Not only that, I should be able to pick the place. This should be our compensatory approach. This is the only suggestion I have. When you go to the table, you say, no, I don't want money. We don't want money. That's an old trick. But if you're going to force us to move, give me the house that I want in the neighborhood that I want to be in, and it's got to be a house that's the equivalent value of what you're taking, and even more than that, it's got to be of greater value. See what I mean?
Right. To be fully
because
compensated.
You're forcing me to move. That's
right.
a compensatory fashion. I didn't ask to move.
Right.
You're forcing me to move. So you don't give me money. You give me a house, and I pick out the house.
Because I'm being damaged. I'm being damaged.
Yes,
so.
I'm being damaged.
Right.
Now you got the concept, and this is the suggestion that I make to all over the world. In other words, you force me to move from any place, just 1 inch. You force me to move just 1 inch from where I am. Then all bets are off, because now I'm entitled to go anywhere according to your dictates, but I go pick out the place that I want to be, even if it's in another state. I go and walk down a street and look at a house and say, that's the house that I want for what you just took from me. That's the way it should work. Otherwise, no deal. Now, that's the way we should approach it. I know that's a different approach, but that's an approach that's really just.
That's
correct.
That would be just and correct.
Doesn't that sounds correct to me?
But here's what part of when the desegregation case, the school ruling, Pinnock versus Board of Education came out in Columbus, Ohio. Judge Robert M. Duncan wrote the decision on that case, and it set precedent. But part of the findings was there were steerings by real estate agents.
Yes, but I'm saying go for the juggler. In other words,
right? They steered people.
What do you actually do?
And so that set up an unjust system in the school system, because blacks were steered into certain areas to live, so their children did not have equal education to white students.
That's what I'm saying.
Steering, right?
We've got about 2 minutes left, Mr. Fuller.
But I'm saying, but since we're talking about this dislocation, because this is the only thing that I thought up in the years that I've been dwelling on it, because I've really been trying to come up with a compensatory approach. And I'm saying, when they take your house, see, I'm getting right down to the wire. When they take your house, you should be able to go anywhere on the planet and pick out a house that you find suitable, in a neighborhood that you find suitable, near a school that you find suitable.
Right.
You know, I mean, you didn't ask anybody anything. You just drove past the place on a Sunday, and you say, hey, that's the one that I want. And they're supposed to give it to you. Whoever's in the house, they're supposed to negotiate to get that house or something similar in that block. To it. Build one if you have to, because of what they took from you. Otherwise, no deal.
Before we go off, I just wanted to make a correction.
I think we should start going with that approach.
We should, absolutely. I just wanted to make one correction. Earlier, I had stated that shooting was in Santa Monica. It was actually Santa Barbara, and the shooter was Elliot Roger. And, it came out today that he has Asperger's syndrome. But, there are no findings that link Asperger's of the autism spectrum to violence. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. Mr. Fuller, thank you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.